When you left, I kind of freaked out. It was the worst thing to ever happen to me.
Betty, I love you so much, but you can't help me like this.
Oh, come on. You still had plenty of other things to live for, right?
Simon, I've been trying so hard to help you. It's saddening, it's maddening, and I'm rapping and...
Deep down, I just kept waiting for the day I'd finally see you again.
However it has to happen. I wish for the power to keep Simon safe.
Keep Simon safe. This was the one desire Betty Groff had in her final moments as a human being, throwing away her life to become a part of a greater madness. For years, we've been kept in the dark about the entity known as Gulp Betty, who was introduced in the climax of Come Along With Me, before f***ing off into the void, remaining absent until the 9th episode of Fiona and Cake, where Simon and the Lich finally come face to face with the deity they've been yearning to see. And while the Lich gets to spend the rest of eternity as a Tetris piece, straight chillin' next to his master, Simon has lost Betty for good. There are plenty of signs that point to Betty's soul being expelled from Gulp, as she's become a catalyst comet, reincarnating into a new life form, which might be this butterfly on Simon's face. Hi, Betty. The idea that Betty unfused from Gulp and became a catalyst comet has become pretty popular amongst fans since the Fiona and Cake finale. And although it's not spelled out in the show, I do think it's the most likely outcome, especially when you look at another character who chose to reincarnate, Finn. So for those not convinced that Betty's on track to live her best life as a new life, come along with me and let me put it all into perspective.
You were a wonderful experience.
You were... everything.
So all of this comic commotion started with a post making the rounds on social media that I shared in my last video, claiming the mysterious runes on Betty's next stop translates to comet. 5-letter runes, 5-letter word. Checks out, right? Well, this claim might actually be false, as other people are saying there is no cipher for this language, at least in the Enchiridion. Getting skeptical myself, I skimmed through Adventure Time ciphers and yeah, from what I could find, these alphabets aren't matching up. But then what the hell does this thing say? One interpretation I've seen come up a few times now is that we're not supposed to understand. It's just meant to show Simon that Betty is moving on to things beyond human comprehension. Now I like this take. It's more or less what I was thinking watching through this finale for the first time. But I also think it doesn't disprove the idea that Betty's on track to reincarnate. If anything, I think it's both. Betty is moving on. She is going somewhere beyond Simon's comprehension. That somewhere is just reincarnation. We can't ignore that even if this claim that the sign was deciphered wasn't true, the sign is still 5 letters long. It definitely could still mean comet. And it's not like the theory was hinging solely on this sign. We can't breeze past the fact that as soon as Betty's wish to keep Simon safe was truly fulfilled, Gulp Betty started to glow blue, and their pose seemed to shift back to Gulp's usual crisscross applesauce position. Not to mention the post-credit scene showing two shapes of Gulp's color palette coming together to take on a new form. An apple with a ribbon around it. A ribbon similar to the one worn by Gulp Betty. It's not like this all means nothing. It's these things alongside the belief that this sign says comet that makes people believe she reincarnated. And honestly, I think you're going to have a much harder time justifying all of these individual things as something other than that. The way I see it, when Betty fused with Gulp, she essentially lost her physical form. Her soul merged with Gulp, affecting its appearance and making her the dominant personality. It's honestly not that far off from what Gulp Betty did to Simon, sending his mind into Shermie and thus making him the dominant personality. And in both cases, these transformations were always meant to be temporary, being expelled from these bodies once Simon has his big epiphany and sees the value in his life. Once he was no longer a danger to himself, Betty's wish was truly fulfilled, and thus her soul was released from Gulp. But since she's technically not dead, the soul just became a comet. Since we know for a fact that Gulp has the power to send minds through time and space, I can imagine the same could be said for her soul. Betty's comet spawning in 1,000 years in the future, during Shermie and Beth's era. Now, I choose to believe that Gulp can't be defeated because as long as order exists, like all of Prismo's peers that we met, chaos will exist as well, and vice versa. So Gulp as an entity wouldn't have reincarnated alongside Betty.
The way you look tonight, silhouetted, I'll never forget it.
Really, I think some people are denying the comet theory because, like Simon, they don't want to let go of Betty. And as someone who has real-life dead girlfriend trauma, I get it. I really do. But if this is the alternative, then respectfully, get a grip! Because this just isn't fair to her, spending the rest of eternity in this void. She dedicated her life to someone, giving her all until there was nothing left. Having no regrets about any of it doesn't erase that, and if it's any consolation, we didn't see Simon and the Dead World string together again, so for all we know, he could have passed and reincarnated as well. Meaning there's a shot that him and Betty may reunite one day, as new people, entering a relationship that's truly on equal footing. And speaking of together again, I think Finn's journey in that episode supports the idea of Betty's reincarnation. Finn was never able to live his best life after Jake died because Jake's absence left a hole in his heart that nothing could fill. Adventures became a coping mechanism for him, as seen with Simon. Finn carrying this chip on his shoulder for the rest of his life meant that he couldn't access the 50th Dead World. Unlike Jake, who's just chill like that. At the end of the special, Finn decides to reincarnate, giving the whole life thing another go with the hopes of truly living to the fullest. And his brother still joins him at the last second, so it's not like he's going on this journey alone. Finn's reason to reincarnate truly reminds me of both Simon and Betty. Betty decided to leave her entire life behind for Simon, and then, once she was stuck with Ice King, she was obsessed with finding a way to cure him so everything could return to how it was. And although she succeeded in curing him, it cost her life. Finn just waited for the day he could see Jake again, and Betty waited for the day she could see Simon again. If they both came to terms with the cards they were dealt with in a healthy way, they could have lived much more fulfilling lives. So, with Finn's story ending with another chance at life, I think it's only fitting that Betty's does as well. I really admire how Adventure Time looks at death. They recognize it's an inevitability, but they try to show the beauty in it as well, whether that's reuniting with loved ones in the afterlife or illustrating how a soul never truly dies. If it chooses, it just goes on to take a new form. People who have been separated by fate may not be separated in another life, and as someone who's lost a partner, that's truly comforting. But as always, these are just my thoughts, and I'd love to hear yours. Do you believe Betty reincarnated at the end of Fiona and Cake, or do you think she's still a part of Gold? Let me know in the comments down below, and keep the conversation going by giving me a follow on Twitter and Instagram at OstricVox. If you enjoyed this video, please sure to like and subscribe to the Roundtable for more great cartoon content. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day. See ya!